So I want to take a minute to talk about service performance and some of the things that you need to be aware of. And right now I'm just looking at a service ticket because I want to start here to kind of explain a few things. So the first thing is we're going to edit this job because there's a couple things you need to understand here. Right now, if you were to come down here and pick a flat rate labor charge to charge this particular job a flat rate amount, you lose the ability at that point to have Lizzy calculate any kind of performance information on the mechanic that did the work because you've eliminated the time element from this job. You've basically said, look, we're going to charge them $50, but you haven't told the system at all how much time that actually amounts to the customer, to the mechanic that did the work. So the flat rate thing you need to use sparingly. Now, one of the things that we did to kind of help with that is, let's say that we go to this $90 an hour rate and we put in that we worked an hour. Well, you'll notice here that the system will calculate out my job labor total. So here I have a time element and a dollar element that I can use as a performance for the mechanic. Well, let's say that I want to use flat rate. I want to just charge this guy $75. Well, if you put in the job labor total, you'll notice that Lizzy will back calculate that time element so that I still have both the best of both worlds. I can still put in something equivalent to a flat rate, but let Lizzy do the time element for me so that I can make sure that we're able to track the proper performance on the mechanic. So that's really all that we need to discuss here on the job with respect to the mechanic performance report. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this. Now, the other thing obviously is clicking the wrench to put in the mechanic that actually did the work and how much time you're billing them and that kind of stuff. So it goes without saying that in order to track the mechanic, we have to know he actually worked on the job. So those are the two primary elements that you have to set in order to do technician performance. Now, when you run the report, which we're going to go do in just a second, you have the ability to tell it to look at unprocessed, look at only processed, and so forth on the jobs. So when you're paying them, you probably don't want to pay them until they're finished with that particular job. So that requires that you check the box here to tell it that that job is complete. Now, the only thing you need to be aware of with respect to that is that once you process the mechanic performance report, you will not be able to go modify that job again. Once you pay them for that work and you've said that that work is complete, you can't go back and change the job. So if you need to make any changes to the work order with respect to that particular job, you'll just have to create a second job on there and put whatever amendments you want to on it. So that's really it for the service ticket. So now let's go run the report. So we're going to go up here and we're going to go to reports. We're going to go to service. And we're going to come down here to our technician performance report. Now, obviously, the first thing is to choose the date range. I'm just going to pick this month. And keep in mind, I'm in the demo database, so there's no telling what is going to come up here. But in your environment, it should look a lot better. So right now, just a few of the options here. We have the ability to choose a location if you happen to have a multi-location environment. You won't see that if you don't. You also have the ability to choose the department, and basically what this is for is you have the ability to have multiple service departments, and so this gives you the ability to choose either the primary service department or one of the secondary service departments to run this report specifically for it. The other options here are pretty self-explanatory. Labor options. Do we want to only look at processed jobs or unprocessed, or do we want to look at both? Do we want to only look at internal or service? Do we want to only look at completed or incomplete jobs? And actually, this is the labor status itself. And then warranty, whether or not we want to look at warranty or non-warranty jobs or both. The other thing is we want to ignore unassigned jobs because we don't want to even, I mean, what's the point in looking at jobs that don't have a mechanic on it at all, unless you're just trying to figure out which ones you forgot. So those are the options. It opens up in what we feel is the default option if you're going to actually be paying the technician. But a few other options here. You can look at a particular technician, a particular labor rate. or you can generate a snapshot. Now, let me explain the snapshot because it kind of confuses a few people. If you run this report with the settings that are on here now, Lizzy is only going to look at unprocessed work orders that need to be paid. So, or need to be paid to the mechanic. So if you processed an invoice yesterday, it will not show up on the report right now. If you run a snapshot, you're telling Lizzy, look, I don't care whether you paid it, I don't care when it was processed, I don't care anything about it. I only want to look at service tickets that are between this date and this date. So forget the whole paid and unprocessed and all that stuff. I just want you to show me every service ticket that was completed on this particular date. So the snapshot, you cannot pay the mechanic performance report when you're running a snapshot because you're possibly eliminating some of the information that's on the report. So, and you kind of have to think about it this way. If a mechanic worked 2 weeks ago on a unit and he had to stop because you special ordered some parts, he came back a week ago and started working on it and he had to stop because you had to get some more parts. And then today he finished the work order. And so you go run this report as a snapshot for today. It's only going to show you the time he logged today. It's not going to show you what he logged 2 weeks ago or a week ago because you're telling it, look, I only want to look at mechanic times for this period of time. So that's why you can't process it, because the normal thing is going to suck up the other two labor times as well on the report. So you just need to make sure you understand that. So I'm going to go ahead and generate this report. And this brings up the detail for the report. Now, we have the ability to click on these things and open up the actual detail. And there's a couple things I want to mention here. The technician performance information that's up here at the top is taking into account that you may have had more than one mechanic work on a particular job. So these numbers up here are correct in the sense that they are giving this mechanic his credit for his portion of the time he spent on that particular unit. Now, when we open up the detail, this is opening up and showing us the billable time and the billable amount and the wrench time for each time this guy worked on anything that was related to this unclassified section. And I'll explain that classification here in a second. In other words, I cannot come in here and just add these times up and have them add up to the same amounts that we have up here at the top, because it's possible. Like here we're listing billable time. This is the total billable time on the job. Well, if this got split between two mechanics, the other mechanic's going to show the billable time as an hour and $70 was what we billed as well. So I can't add them up for both of them, and this isn't showing me a percentage, it's showing me the actual billable time and amount on that particular invoice. So just understand that you can't just add these things up and have them equal, unless the mechanic was the only person that worked on the jobs, then they should add up. So that's pretty much it for this. Now, the unclassified type that we have here, you actually have the ability to classify jobs as class A, B, C, whatever it is you want to call them, and Lizzy will keep up with those classifications when she's running the report. If you don't use them, then they're all just going to show up as unclassified. It really does not make any difference to what's going on here. It's just how you want to organize your particular jobs. Now, at some point, I want to tell the system that the things I'm looking at here, I have paid the mechanics for. I have given them credit for these things, and I'm done with this particular date range, and I don't want it to show up again. I want anything that I run for next week, I don't want it to include any of this stuff. When you get to that point, that's when you're going to scroll down here to the bottom of the report, and you're going to click this button that says Process Unprocessed Items. That will tag those items that you have paid the mechanics, you've processed them out of the system, and it will lock those jobs so that you cannot make any modifications to them. So you may think that it would be good to go and run a snapshot and not process any jobs and skip all of this, but keep in mind that running a snapshot, you're not looking at all the time they spent on a particular job. You're looking at only the time they logged between the dates you picked. So it really is kind of important that you process this thing when you're actually running the report to pay mechanics, so that you let the system keep itself clean. It is a little bit of a downside that you can't modify the jobs after you process time on them, but it's easy enough to go and create another job on that ticket and reverse or undo whatever it is that you made the mistake on. So it's not really that big of a deal, but it is kind of important that for this particular report to function properly, that you keep all of that stuff organized and process it out properly.